You're live.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. We are back live again. This is the Senate Transportation Committee. And our next item on the agenda this morning is talking about the Transportation Board. They've been around a long time. They handle a lot of issues. And I think who would like to go first? Anthea or John Dunleavy or Emily? Who would like to lead off?
I think what might make sense is if I talk a little bit about sort of the process as to how this language was developed and why the administration wanted it, these changes made, and do a little bit of legislative history, and then I can pause and not do my in-depth walkthrough, and you can hear from your other witnesses.
So this is a new language, Anthea. This is new language about the T-board. Is that?
No. So what happened was in 2016.
Okay.
There was language that was enacted that I believe was worked on predominantly by the judiciary committees, and I'll put it up so the committee can see it.
Okay. All right. Go ahead. You can go through it. I'm sorry.
So this isn't even language in your bill. I'm going to talk about something that happened in 2016.
Okay. All right. Go ahead. Yep.
This is 2016 Acts and Resolves number 167, and in it, section 6 added language to say that all other, and this is at the very bottom of the page, having the majority of the appeals from decisions from the Transportation Board go to the Supreme Court and not the Superior Court. So looking at the language that was in existing statute, it maintained the fact that the condemnation proceedings, the takings, eminent domain matters continue to be regulated under 19 VSA Chapter 5. And then it maintained the appeal, and this is sort of in the middle of that paragraph. I apologize, there are no line numbers because it's an act, that any order resulting from a majority of the board, that stayed the same, but final orders of the board, only those that were issued pursuant to section 20 of this title, which has to do with small claims against the agency, would be reviewed on the record by a superior court. And then there was language added that said all other final orders of the board may be reviewed on the record by the Supreme Court. Unfortunately, this is just language in Title 19, and there are a whole number of places in Titles 5 and one place in Title 9 where the appeal route was different, and there were not what we would call a conforming revision made. So you have a potential ambiguity where in Title 19, it's saying all of the appeals, except for these other two, the eminent domain condemnation and the small claims against the agency, get appealed to the Supreme Court. Yet all throughout Title 5 and one place in Title 9, it says appeals go to the Superior Court, appeals go to the Superior Court. So the language that you have, and it takes about 10 pages of the T-bill, is going into all of the places in Title 5 and the one place in Title 9, and looking for all of the instances of Superior Court, and then determining if that reference to a Superior Court has to do with an appeal from a Transportation Board decision. And then if it does, using the phrasing that it shall have judicial review pursuant to the language that I just had up, 19 VSA Section 5, subsection C. So if we were going back in time to 2016, when the language was changed in Section 5, probably should have made all of these changes throughout Title 5 and the one in Title 9. So we're making it so that Title 5 is going to match with this judicial review language in 19 VSA Section 5. So that's kind of the big picture as to why all of this language is here. And I have worked on this language with John Dunleavy and Emily, who you will be hearing from after I break. I'm happy to walk through the language, but I know that some of the witnesses have a tight timeline. So if you don't have questions for me on the overarching approach, I think I will pause there.
Okay. Who would like to go next? I know there's someone whose schedule is different. Who's
Emily Weatherill.
Emily, good morning. Go right ahead and take over.
Hi, thank you, Senator. For the record, my name is Emily Weatherill. I'm the deputy clerk at the Supreme Court. It's nice to see all of you. This is not a committee that I'm used to testifying in front of. So hello to all of you. I don't know if we've met before.
No, thank you.
And I don't really actually have much to add to what Anthea said. I think that these amendments are helpful in eliminating any confusion that might have arisen. The initial amendment that was made back in 2016 was done to really provide some efficiencies, because what was happening is you have a full hearing before the Transportation Board. There's a record created there at the Transportation Board. And then those appeals were going to the Superior Court, not for a new trial, but just for an appeal on that record that was created at the board. And then another appeal to the Supreme Court for, again, an appeal on the record. And so I think that these changes are recognizing that there are other places where the Transportation Board creates a full record, has a full hearing, and then that on the record review can happen directly at the Supreme Court instead of having that inefficiency of going first to the Superior Court and then coming to the Supreme Court. I think that some of the questions that had arisen previously, Anthea's really done a great job of working through that bill and making sure that there's continuity throughout the amendments. So unless the committee has questions, I don't have anything further really to add.
Okay. Any questions from Emily this morning, committee?
Could you just discuss Section 8, discontinuation of Judiciary Service Center? You'll discontinue to respond to communications from Vermont attorneys. Could you just speak to that? That's part of.
Senator Kitchell, that is language from the 2016 Act.
It's underlined, that's why I was wondering. Is it just because we changed sections?
So that is not language that you, that is already law. If you look at the top, you'll see it says 2016 number 167. That's an act from 2016. That's not proposed for this year's T-bill.
All right, okay. Oh, all right, thank you, thank you. I was like, oh. So why is it even in here? Because of the sections having to be renumbered?
Senator Kitchell, the only reason I included that in the information that you have is because if you go to the other side of the page, page 6, you'll see what happened in 2016 that is now necessitating these conforming revisions. So that was just for your education purposes to know what happened in 2016 and why these changes are being proposed now.
Well, I was getting a little confused on Section 8 and Section 8A.
And I can completely understand.
All right. John Dunleavy must have done this.
No, Senator, I didn't. That's why we're here.
John's been with us a long time, right, John?
That's right, Senator.
Retired.
Well, I'm helping out a little bit.
Oh, okay.
Okay, who would like, John, would you like to add anything to this?
Senator, Mr. Chairman, I think the first two witnesses have described the situation pretty thoroughly. And again, Anthea has done an excellent job in going through these statutes and trying to find these little places that got overlooked back in 2016. And again, the objective here is just to conform Title V and in one place Title IX to what was done in 2016. The idea is that because the Transportation Board is a quasi-judicial body that makes findings of fact that are conclusive, most of the appeals, with the exception of land condemnations and small claims, should go directly to the Supreme Court, because the only thing that can be appealed is issues of law. So it would be redundant to make a separate trip to the Superior Court. So it's in the interest of efficiency, both for the litigants before the Transportation Board and also for the court system.
Makes sense.
Thank you. Well, Anthea certainly makes us look good every day, I'll tell you. Anything else?
Nothing from me, Senator.
Okay, thank you very much, John. Anthea, anything else you want to follow up with?
The only thing I would say is if the committee wants, I can do sort of a more detailed line by line walkthrough. I don't know if that's something you want to do before you officially have the bill, but I'm happy to do it now or at a later point, up to you.
Is it going to change from the House at this time, or?
I don't think it's going to change.
Well, we got a few minutes. You want to run through it right now? Go right ahead. Sure.
Sure.
Okay.
And maybe I can just in advance, I'm going to have to log off in about 10 minutes.
Sure.
I'm happy
Okay.
to stay on for a minute, but just in advance, apologize if I do
No
need to get
problem.
off.
No problem. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to put up the actual language in the T-bill now. So Senator Kitchell, it will be the other document that you have at your desk, and I will be starting on page 33 of 58 with section 25. So section 25, that is changing the title of the chapter. Instead of it saying proceedings, semicolon, appeal to Superior Court, instead it's proceedings by the board, add a little bit more specificity so you know what proceedings. And then instead of appeal to Superior Court, using this consistent phrasing of judicial review. So that is changing the title of chapter 3 in title 5. Section 26, your first change is going to be on line 12. This is eliminating the use of he or she and instead using non-gendered language, using the individual instead. And we're using individual as person here because this is in reference to a board member. And then remember, we always have that person means like corporations and other entities, whereas if you're just talking about a human being, we can use individual. Down on lines 18 and 19 is the first place where we're getting what's going to be sort of the consistent theme throughout all of these changes, where we have identified through our keyword searches, this is Superior Court. It has to do with appeal. It's talking about when a case is being deemed complete. We've got our final order, even though the order is appealed to a superior court. Instead, that's going to use the consistent phrasing of judicial review is sought pursuant to 19 VSA section 5C. And that is the statutory language that was changed in 2016. You'll be seeing this change a lot throughout the balance of the language that we're working through. Section 27, only change that you have here, line 6 and 7, it is an appeal to the Superior Court from a decision of the Transportation Board. Instead of saying appeal to Superior Court, it's judicial review pursuant to 19 VSA section 5C, same as the change we saw at the bottom of the prior page. Section 28, making changes to the title of a section. Instead of it being review by Superior Court, it is judicial review. And then that same phrasing of instead of appeal to a superior court under Rule 74 of the Vermont Rules of Civil Procedure, seek judicial review pursuant to 19 VSA section 5C. Going down a little bit further at line 15, there's the insertion of interlocutory. That is a term that sort of means in the middle of, so it's an appeal that is partway through the proceedings. That would still be pursuant to 19 VSA section 5C. On the top of page 35, this instead of it being the board or a superior court granting a stay, it would be board or Supreme Court granting a stay under the provisions of section 44, which is the next section we'll see. And then one of the things that the editors have started doing is we used to use sort of very generically, if it was anything in the title, section, for example, here 44 of this title, using a little bit more specificity to say section 44 is in the same chapter. So that's something that the editors have started flagging. In the next section at line 4, having a more specific lead-in, and it's upon appeal to the Supreme Court, and then saying what the court can do, and then a switch from Superior Court to Supreme Court in 2 places. And in the title of the section as well. This was something where the language seemed a little bit more awkward with using judicial review, and then it seemed more appropriate here for sort of minimizing the changes that were being made to keep it as a reference to the Supreme Court. Section 29, it's not going to be a change until the bottom of that section, which is at the very next page. And this is the same phrasing you're seeing throughout. It's an appeal, it's to the Superior Court, saying seek judicial review pursuant to 19 VSA section 5C instead of the language about the appeal going to the Superior Court. Section 30, this is just a redesignation where we use redesignation instead of amended to talk about if you're changing the number of the section or the title of the section. The reason why this is including all the language was it was pretty short, and House Transportation said, well, people might ask us what the section is about, but all that is changing here is instead of using Superior Court, using the broader sort of consistent with the phrasing of judicial review. Section 31, you have in addition to the section heading, no change to the actual law, but since some of this section has to do with judicial review, including that in the section heading, to assist the reader in knowing whether or not this is the section that they're looking for in statute. You'll then see on line 11, and you'll see this change quite a bit throughout the balance of this section, a striking of or corporation. In our general definition of person that we use throughout all of the titles, person typically includes corporation. Here in Title 5, in the very first section, 5 VSA Section 1, Subdivision 4, has in its definition of person that it includes corporation. So using a person or corporation throughout is redundant, and you'll see or corporation being struck several times in this section, line 11, line 17 and 18, and I think you'll see it at least a few more times on the next page. You do, at lines 1 and 3. Going down to the bottom of this subsection, you have more of the language about seeking judicial review pursuant to 19 VSA Section 5C, and then having a bit more specificity as to what person was aggrieved. So any person aggrieved by an order of the Transportation Board, saying that it is only those who were a party to the proceedings may actually seek judicial review under 19 VSA Section 5C. So I would say that that is a clarification there, not expanding who has appeal rights and then making that same consistency change of linking to 19 VSA Section 5C. In your next subsection, you have that same striking out of the redundant corporation. And then at line 20, you have an elimination of gendered language and instead using person. The reason why this is not individual as opposed to person is you need person because the aggrieved party could be someone who wasn't just an individual. Almost done. You have in section 32, a change to the section heading. Instead of it saying appeal, using judicial review, our consistent phrasing there. And then at the end, instead of the appeal from the order going to the Superior Court, again, seek judicial review pursuant to 19 VSA Section 5C. We are now out of the changes in Title 5. And we're into the one change in Title 9. This actually is in the Auto Dealer Franchise Practices Act that you have spent time with in a different section, adding some clarity that it is only those decisions of the board that are authorized under the chapter on lines 15 and 16. And then you have your same consistency change, having the orders be appealed, having judicial review through 19 VSA Section 5C as opposed to calling out the court there, and then changing on lines 11 to 13, the taking of evidence, it would be by the Supreme Court on appeals from orders or decisions by the board authorized under this title. So switching the court to be consistent with 19 VSA Section 5C, one where judicial review pursuant to didn't fit as well, and then adding some specificity there as to what orders and decisions would be appealable. And then finally, I would say this is more of not necessarily a conforming revision because you have in cases where the board finds that this is under current law, if the board finds that there was a violation of that Franchise Practices Act, then it would be the Superior Court upon petition that would determine reasonable attorney's fees. So you would have, even though it was a decision of the board, not an appeal, but the determination being made by the Superior Court. Here instead, it's the determination being made by the board on that same level, not one up in more of an appellate review type process. That takes us through our conforming revisions. And then the other thing that came up on the administration's end when the Agency of Transportation was looking at 19 VSA Section 5, and the comment was, there's a lot in this section, and there really, really is. There are many, many subsections in 19 VSA Section 5. all about the Transportation Board and the powers and duties. And one of the things that we like to do when there's a lot going on in a section is add subsection headings to make it easier for the people who are reading the statutes to know, well, do I need to read the subsection? What is the subsection about? So all throughout 19 VSA Section 5, adding in subsection headings related to the language and the balance of the subsection. And even just looking at the subsections headings that are proposed in this language, you'll see the true breadth of everything that's covered by 19 VSA Section 5. So for subsection A, adding a subsection heading that this section is about general duties and responsibilities and exceptions to those. Subsection B is all about the naming of transportation facilities. And again, there's no changes to the law here. It's simply adding the subsection heading. In that naming of transportation facilities, there is another linking to the judicial review pursuant to subsection C of the section. The reason why it's not the phrasing you'd seen earlier pursuant to 19 VSA Section 5C is because we are now in that section, and it's just the reference to the subsection. That's on line 17 and 18. Subsection C, you've got the language that sort of started all of this back in 2016, adding a subsection heading to say what it's about, and then for assistance to the reader, not a substantive change, but adding a parenthetical. You've heard, I believe, at least two of us that talked about the appeals that would not go to the Supreme Court, the condemnation proceedings. You'll see that up above on lines 4 to 6. And then the finals orders of the board that are issued pursuant to Section 20 of this title are reviewed by the Superior Court. Those are the small claims against the agency. And instead of the reader needing to go and look to see, well, what does 19 VSA Section 20 have to do with, adding a parenthetical there to assist the reader, not changing the law or changing the appeal rights or route, but simply providing assistance to the reader as they're reviewing the language to figure out what it's applicable to.
And might you just zoom in to make the text larger on the screen? A couple more? Oh, that's better. Thank you.
So, Anthea,
Apologies, I didn't do that earlier.
all right, so let me ask, in the document that we have here, which is Act 167 in 2016, you keep referencing 19 VSA Section 5, except for what you're doing here, that 2016 language remains unchanged.
Correct.
Okay, that's, I just want to make sure that I understood that, and what you're here is really organizing it and creating headings to help walk through a kind of a lengthy section.
Correct. So I would say if you were trying to describe all of this in just a sentence, sections, I think we started at 25 to 33 are making conforming revisions based on 2016 Acts and Resolves number 167, changing the policy around where appeals go. And then section 34 is adding subsection headings to an otherwise cumbersome section of law.
Thank you. I just wanted to confirm that.
Yep, you got it right.
Well, that's amazing.
Not to us.
Okay, and now that it's finally zoomed in enough that you can see it, I will finish out. We're almost done. You've got a subsection heading added on line 14, specific duties and responsibilities of the board. Subsection E, offices and assistants. And then your final two, jurisdiction, subpoenas, and witness fees, that's subsection F, and subsection G, there's one more, reports to the General Assembly. And then subsection H is appeals from the agency to the board. And that rounds out the language that you have before you now. I think I will complicate matters if I talk about the next section, but it's kind of sort of related, and I think it makes sense to deal with that at a later point.
Okay. Senator Chittenden, we're going to have a test on this in 10 minutes, okay?
I'm gonna fail, but
Conforming revisions, that's the phrasing. We're
I'm
making
going to fail with you.
conforming revisions.
We'll buzz over that. We'll buzz over that section pretty rapidly.
You just have to remember later that we went over that section, that we don't have to go over it again.
Yeah, that's right. Thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions, comments, anything? Thank you, Anthea. Good morning. Appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you,
Happy to
John.
help.
Anybody else? I guess that covers it. Emily has left us, and I think that is it for the morning committee. If you take us offline.